Hello and welcome to Rando Tech Info. Today we're doing a review roundup of the Google Pixel 4 and Pixel 4 XL. This has been one of the most anticipated and most polarizing phones of the year. How does it measure up, and what is the general consensus of online reviewers about how good this phone is compared to other flagship phones? Let's find out. So we're going to start out with the design and form factor of the phone. Most reviewers seem to like the design and form factor of this phone, which is a little bit surprising because when we first saw pictures of the front of the phone, it got a lot of flack from people about its large forehead, its large top bezel that houses all of its crazy camera, face scanning, motion sensing tech. But the general consensus is that you kind of get used to that top bezel. Even after you turn the phone sideways and you're using it in landscape mode, the asymmetry doesn't seem to be an issue for most people. No, it's not going to be confused with some of the sleekest looking phones on the market, like a OnePlus 7 Pro, for example, with a pop-up selfie cam, but most people seem to think it's pretty good. People like the colors, they especially like the frosted white and orange versions of the phone. The glossy black does not seem to be getting quite as much love, but people say it feels premium, feels good, good to hold. So general design and form factor of this phone, general consensus is this phone gets a B+. The screen is kind of a mixed bag on this phone. The color reproduction and the general overall look of the screen is being viewed very highly. The 90 Hz refresh rate was considered a really big draw of this phone when we first heard about it, when we saw it sampled at the Made by Google conference where this phone was announced. Since then, there have been some issues that have come to light about the display, specifically that the 90 Hz is not always on. That the 90 Hz, the phone chooses whether or not the 90 Hz is always running or not based on the situation, and that in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. It'll save battery and whatnot, but what people have been able to figure out is when the phone is below 75% brightness, it will never switch into 90 Hz regardless of the situation. Google has addressed this and is supposedly working on a fix, but still, it's kind of an interesting thing that one of the big things they were pushing on this phone was the smooth display, this 90 Hz smooth display, and for a lot of people, a lot of the time, it never actually activates. The other drawback on this screen, the criticism that people have said about it, is it's not very bright. I think it caps out at 400 nits, which is pretty low by flagship standards today. So when you're outside and the sun's showing on the phone, it's very difficult to see. A lot of people are really complaining about the lack of brightness on this phone. When looking at all the variables on the screen, we're going to go ahead and give it a B. Performance and specs on this phone, not the most impressive. In fact, they're on the lower end of impressive for a flagship device. It's got the 855 processor in it instead of the 855 Plus. It's got 6 gigs of RAM in it when most flagships today have at least 8, some even have 12. It doesn't have the fastest storage speeds that you can get on a phone. All that aside, it's not terrible. Most people are saying that the phone is snappy. Google does a nice job with the close to stock Android to keep the phone feeling really fast, really fluid. To me, the biggest spec weakness on this phone is storage. To release a flagship phone in today's market at a flagship price, which this phone is definitely priced in flagship territory, to only offer 64 and 128 megabyte storage options is just not going to cut it for a lot of people, especially now that Google has pulled its free original storage quality for photos away from Google Photos if you own a Pixel phone. So in the past, when you bought a Pixel phone, it would save your pictures and videos at original quality when you uploaded them to Google Photos. That is no longer the case with the Pixel 4. So you're going to be using up more storage space if you don't want your pictures and videos to get compressed when you upload them to the cloud, assuming you're using Google Photos. For flagship level, which is what this phone is supposed to be, and for flagship pricing, which is what this phone charges, we're going to give the specs on this phone a C+. The camera. Google obviously is known for having one of the best cameras on smartphones. That's their reputation. They've been the leader in cameras on phones for a very long time. This computational photography is still thought by many to be the best in the business. It's got some neat features. It's got double sliders on this phone. that allows you to adjust the contrast of the foreground and the background together. Its portrait mode is strong. It's got astrophotography. Don't know how often that'll get used, but it's got it. It's got an amazing zoom on it, probably one of, if not the best zoom that we've seen, at least in this market, on a phone. There's a lot to like about the camera. Unfortunately, a lot of people are upset that it does not have the wide angle lens. That was mentioned in every single review that I watched or read about this phone. Every single person mentioned the lack of a wide angle lens. It is a sticking point. People like their wide angle lenses. They want a wide angle lens. And when Google made the decision not to include it on this phone, it bothered a lot of people. So while what the phone does, what the camera does on the phone is amazing, and it does almost everything well, it's lacking versatility that you see in some other cameras on phones. The other knock on this camera is that the video is not up to snuff with the photography. Not that the video's bad, but it's not amazing in the same way that the still photography is. So, is it a good camera? Yes. Is it a great camera? Yes. Is it perfect? And really the other question is it even the best camera on a phone? I think some people would argue that the iPhone 11, the pros in particular, have caught up and are also really, really good. So camera gets a good score overall. People like it, but it's not perfect. Camera score is an A-. So the battery, it's bad. There's really not much else to say about it. It's bad on the XL. It's even worse on the non-XL. The non-XL model, most reviewers said, didn't even make it through the day, especially if they went to developer options. We talked about before about the 90 hertz refresh rate. The people who forced the 90 hertz and kept their screen brightness up on this phone and kept all the different bells and whistles activated, the majority of them could not get the base Pixel 4 through the day. The XL, for some people, didn't make it through the day, although most people seem to think the XL was considerably better than the base model, the smaller Pixel 4. But at the end of the day, batteries are subpar in both devices. If you're looking for a long-lasting phone, neither one of these are the option. Because of the difference in battery life of the two phones, though, they're going to get two separate scores. So the XL will get a C-, and the regular Pixel gets a D-. So other miscellaneous features on this phone. The face unlock and motion sense that's on it. A lot of people really like it. Some other people not so much. It's very polarizing. Some people just like Face ID and some people don't. What's really bothering some people, though, about the face unlock is that it works with your eyes closed. Now, Google is working on a fix for this, but until they do, some people are really worried about the security of that. And since there's no fingerprint unlock, it is your only biometric security option. So it's both good and it's bad. Motion sense, most people seem to feel like is just a gimmick right now, has some potential in the future. Does have some practical application as far as like the phone being able to sense you picking up the phone. It helps the face unlock work quicker, things like that. You can wave off alarms, which some people liked, but the whole, moving the hand over the phone to change songs, things like that, for the majority of reviewers, it didn't even work very well. And for the ones who did, they didn't really seem that in love with it. So motion sense, while it's there, seems to have a way to go. The Google Assistant right now, the second generation Google Assistant, which is great. People really seem to like it when it's working, but it doesn't work on the phone if you have a G Suite account on your phone, or if you're not using motion gestures. If you're using the regular 3 buttons at the bottom of the screen, it's also disabled, which is really, really strange. But for a lot of people, that kills that feature of the phone. It's got the voice transcription and the voice recording on the phone. It can transcribe videos and stuff in real time, which is fantastic, especially for people who have hearing issues. That's an amazing feature. Nothing bad to say about that. But if you're not one of those folks and you don't need the transcription voice recorder that it has on it, then those things may not be that useful to you. If you're someone who likes and values all those things and all the AI little wizardry that Google brings to the Pixel phones, then the Pixel is probably going to be a good phone for you. If you also like being on the cutting edge of Android, you'll get Android 11 on this phone the day it comes out. It's the only phones that will do that. So if you want the latest software and you like those little extras that Google bakes into their phones, then I think by all means, that's something that you should consider. If those things aren't that important to you, then you're probably going to be paying a lot of money for features that you're not actually going to use. So the miscellaneous features great on this phone. It does have a lot of cool stuff if you're into that stuff. Not all of it's going to be super useful, but we're going to go ahead and give special features on this phone an A-. In conclusion, I think this is a really tough phone for reviewers to score and grade. On the one hand, it does some really neat things that other phones cannot do with its AI wizardry and its great computational photography. And then on the other hand, you've got some of the basic things that you expect the flagship phone to do that this phone does not do well. So where does that leave it? It's a very polarizing device. People seem to either love it or hate it. And then as a reviewer, you have to figure out, well, what's the landing point for this? So most reviewers seem to give this phone a 4 out of 5 stars or a 7 or an 8 out of 10, which I think was pretty fair. So here at Rando Tech Info, overall grade, we're going to say the XL gets a B, and the regular Pixel 4 gets a B-. And the separation in grades is because of the separation in battery life. So there you have it. I hope you found this video useful. If you have any comments about the Pixel 4, Pixel 4 XL, please feel free to leave them down in the comments. If you found this video useful, as always, please feel free to give us a thumbs up and a sub. And until next time, this is Rando Tech Info signing out.